This episode was brought to you by Resilient Nutrition. Pals, greetings and welcome. Welcome to another episode of Everything Endurance. It is, as always, as I'm sure you're used to me saying by now, an absolute pleasure to have you with us again. We're very excited at the moment. I'm very excited at the moment. I'm assuming you guys are. We are just under 3 weeks away now on the release date of this podcast from being in the Highlands, out on the Knoydart Peninsula, having a genuine adventure. There hasn't been anywhere near enough adventure over the last sort of 18 months or so, so this is going to be fantastic. The area we're going to, I mean, you guys will have heard me wanging on about this, but I can't get over it. I haven't been able to go there yet. I wasn't available when we did the recce last year, so all I've seen is the photos and the drone footage. And I got to tell you, I watched Lord of the Rings recently, and I was less impressed with Middle Earth than I am by Knoydart. So yeah, I'm hugely impressed. We've got our own Highland Ultra IPA beer that we've had bottled for it, which is going to be available at the campsite at the end of the days. The Knoydart Forest Trust are making wooden medals for us with the Highland Ultra logo burnt onto them, which is going to look absolutely brilliant. I've seen some of the early versions of those and they just look great. I'm really excited, and we've been in partnership with the Knoydart Forest Trust. We're helping through this race and through all of B2U's other races to rewild the area and work on all these woodland projects for us. And I'm going to get to see them. We're going to get to run around and through and among them, which is just going to be absolutely epic. So for the 100 odd people who are going to be joining us up in Knoydart, if you're listening to this, I hope you're as excited as I am, because I cannot wait for this. If you're not one of the people that's going to be joining us in October, then, you know, head to the website. You can probably still bag a late place. And we are going to be back there in April, so you can always book in for that. But also just keep an eye on our social media in a couple of weekends' time, because we are going to be pinging back as many updates as we can from that beautiful, beautiful area. And also, we will be doing our Strava Running Club Challenge during the event. So if you are a member of the Beyond the Ultimate Running Club on Strava, which you should be, right? Head there now. Just look for Beyond the Ultimate. Really easy to find. Then, yeah, anyone who is running alongside us over that week is in with a chance, if you run up the full 125 kilometers or more, of winning. And we've got some great prizes for this. There's going to be at least £1,000 worth of prizes. And from how excited we all are behind the scenes in deciding what we're going to give away, I imagine it could well be more than that. So yeah, to be in with a chance, go to Strava. Don't tell me you don't use it. I mean, surely everyone does, right? If it's not on Strava, then did you even run? Head over to Strava, look for Beyond the Ultimate. You'll find our running club, and we'll be releasing more details over the next couple of weeks of how you can take part. So yeah, all very exciting. Highland Ultra themed. I'm buzzing. Right. We've got a guest today. We should probably move on to that bit. Today's guest was, the last time I spoke to him, the man who ran the world. Now he's the man who ran Britain. If that sounds like a demotion in any way, then you're not listening to it right. Because when he was the man that ran the world, it was because he went to literally every country on the planet and ran a marathon there. What he's done this time is run the entirety of the coastline of mainland Britain. We are talking an awfully long distance with an awfully large amount of miles each day. The initial aim was to do 200 marathons in 100 days, and in doing so cover the circumference of the UK. Life put paid to that. Injuries put paid to that. There were hardships and troubles along the way, but this guy never gave up. And that's what we're going to listen to today. He's also going to tell us about the 196 Foundation, which I just think is one of the most uniquely exciting charity projects I've heard about in the longest time. So do stick with us right to the end and have a listen out for that. Look for the links for it in the description below, wherever you're listening to this, and you'll find a link to it so you can go and see what all that is about. It is an amazing thing. Just go, read, get involved. It's fantastic. You'll love it. Also, just a warning for anyone who is watching this on YouTube rather than listening to this podcast. Nick, being the adventurous type as he is, was not in an area where we could get good enough Wi-Fi for him to be able to record video in this podcast. So you won't be seeing Nick during this episode, but you'll be hearing plenty from him, and he's got some amazing stories to tell after his amazing trip around the UK. So without further ado, let's talk to Nick Butter. Nick, how are you?
Oh, thank you so much for having me on again. I feel honoured. I'm well. I'm in the midst of prepping for the speaking tour and writing books, and not doing as much running, but I've done a lot of that recently. So I'll let myself off.
Yeah. I mean, if anyone has earned a little bit of time off their legs at the moment, I think it is you. And I think that's going to become clear as we go through the podcast and really dig into what you've just done. For the benefit of anyone who's listening to this and just wasn't paying attention during my intro, what have you just done, Nick?
I've done a little run around Britain. So we called it Run Britain. This was me trying to run around the whole of the country as quickly as I could, and hopefully beat the existing time, and hopefully have a good time in the process. I think in reality, I did the former, but not the latter. It was a brilliant trip, but it was brutal on my body. So yeah, we ran for about 12 hours a day. 2 marathons a day was the plan. So 2 marathons per day for 100 days. So that was going to be the mission, 200 marathons. And we did the distance. We did the 200 marathon equivalent. But it took me a few more days longer than I would have liked because we came up against lots of injuries. But the benefit is I can now say I've been to every beach in Britain. So I did it the hard way.
Yeah, you absolutely did. What a great thing to be able to say as well. I love that. You have literally visited every beach in the UK.
Yeah, that's cool. It's cool. And even some of the beaches that I didn't expect to really like, and the characters of different places. You talk about, I think when you talk about beaches, you think about beauty and kind of elegance, but actually some of the British beaches have got so much character, and from old fishing villages to the kind of great lights of Blackpool and that kind of area, to then the wilderness of Scotland. It was such a learning curve, and I feel very, very privileged to have done it.
What a different approach as well to your last trip. Every planet on Earth. I still, every time I think back to that project, my mind is blown and I am overwhelmed with a wave of white hot jealousy. But what you've done here is a very different thing. You have picked apart the UK in its entirety around that coastline. There'll be few people who can claim to know it better than you do now.
Yeah, I think with running the world, that posed huge logistical and financial issues and safety issues, and lots more headaches and stress around lots of other areas that caused us much less difficulty in this trip. But I wasn't to say that they weren't without, I guess, suffering and trauma from not just me, but from the team and the crew. When I think if you go out and run, 10, 20 miles a day, I think a lot of people will be surprised how long you can sustain that for. I think you can sustain it much longer than you expect. But then when you get to the 50 odd miles every day, you then battle weather, you battle the daylight, and you also battle whatever the day faces you in terms of elevation, traffic, mud, flooding, shingles on the beaches. And then the team has to go through the same hardships. My right-hand man, which I'm sure we'll talk more about, a guy called Andy, who I've known for a long time. He also joined me for a few marathons around running the world. He was my right-hand man on the journey. He drove the support van. He drove every 2 miles to every junction. He made my breakfast. He washed my clothes. He tucked me in at night. He gave me massages. He was an absolute saint. And if I've learned anything, we talk about the privilege of seeing Britain, but I have this real special privilege, which I don't think many people have, of spending 4 months solidly every single day. And I'm talking solidly. It's not like we're apart for a lot of it. We see each other every 5 minutes because he's driving past me and handing me water. To spend 4 months with somebody that isn't your partner or spouse and isn't a family member, a friend, intense 4 months on a mission where they're not having any of the claim and the fame and the enjoyment. They're just sitting in a van helping. And I owe so much to him. And I'm not kind of bringing it up just to thank him. I'm bringing it up to say, I think more people should try and experience that, because it is a really quite profound thing to do. And I've actually just got off the phone with him, which is why I was a couple of minutes turning up to you, because we are we're in London this weekend for the marathon. So it's a very special thing to do. People get it when they go traveling, I suppose, in those gap years, but very rarely do you have it in such an intense way that we had.
You mentioned hardship in there as well. I mean, you guys have really had to overcome a lot over the sort of 128 days you were out there, and that's got to draw two people together. You've got to be pushing in the same direction the whole time, right? So I think if anyone deserves a shout out right now, it's Andy. So greetings to Andy. And
absolutely. And he's far too modest to even acknowledge anything like that, but he really does deserve a lot of credit, and to Nikki as well, who obviously, and Poppy the dog to a lesser extent, but I think she was hindering more than helping. But no, it was a brilliant journey.
I mean, we've jumped around a bit, but I like to follow the conversation. The logistics behind this must have been incredibly tricky and must have taken a lot of working out in advance. I'm sure I read somewhere that there were sort of 3 support vans involved in the operation at one point. Like, how difficult was it to keep you on the road?
Yeah, exactly. I think it's keeping me on the road. I don't need 3 vehicles to support me. I'm just a runner, and I just have, 1 mouth to feed and 2 legs to run. But the support crew ultimately need a bit of freedom and a bit of balance to be able to have time to go off, and even if it's not enjoyment, even if it's just going and doing the food shop, Andy can't disappear and go and fill up with fuel in the van and fill up with food for me and be away from an hour if I'm running in torrential rain and I need food to eat. He needs to be present, so somebody else needs to go and do that. And he needs a break from all of that stuff. So the logistics actually came from the wider mechanism of the machine that was the team, let alone just supporting me. Everything from drying clothes, for example. It's raining where I am here, and it was raining quite a lot on the trip as well. And if it's torrential, howling rain, anybody will know if you run in it, you don't last much more than 5-10 minutes until you're absolutely dripping wet. And then that's when your toes start to suffer. That's when all of your kind of chafing and rubbing starts to suffer, and it begins to be miserable. So I was changing my clothes quite often, but that meant that those clothes had to be dried. And when you're in a van, where do you dry the clothes? So we need another vehicle to be able to have the space. Unfortunately, Nikki and I's van has got a pretty good heater, but that meant Nikki had to be present as well. So little things like that are fine over a week or two, and you can endure that. But over 128 days, it's just so intense, and everybody starts to get grumpy, and you have to kind of overcome those bits. So that was the biggest daily occurrence, I think, for us, is just getting over all the little bits of the trip that got in the way as we got more and more sleep deprived.
I can bet, absolutely. And you mentioned food in there. I mean, anyone who's a fan of ultra running will know that it's basically glorified snacking over long distances. Yes. I mean, what are we talking about in terms of your calorific needs over the course of this trip?
So we worked out that I would probably need about 8,000 calories a day to sustain my 12-hour running day of 50 odd miles, and often more often than not 2,000 or 3,000 meters of ascent in a day, at least 2,000. And
Britain sure is lumpy.
And exactly, it's very lumpy. And just the basic food for keeping a normal human being going. You need food to recover a body, even if it's not done any running overnight. So I was having to make sure I was eating enough in the evening. I have to make sure I eat enough in the mornings, but not too much that I then have to, pull the van over and go to the toilet every 5 minutes, which often happened because my diet was so poor, because I was just eating as much calories as I could, and I was trying to enjoy it. I made a very distinct call at the beginning of, I'm not going to just go down the hard line of pure nutrition fuel for 12 hours a day for 128 days, because that's just absolutely brutal on the mental side of it. I don't want to just have nuts and all of the good things I should have. And also I would get to a point where, because I don't want to eat it, I won't eat it, and therefore I would lose more weight. And so I'm just going to eat everything, Belgian buns, ice buns, pasties, pastries, pizzas, anything I could get my hands on. And still, I weighed myself every day, got out of bed in my boxers on the scales, and I lost weight every single day of the trip. There was not one day where my weight increased or went back up to where it was the following day. It was always slightly less than the day before. And with that comes a lot of pain in the legs, because you just lose muscle after you've lost all your fat.
Of course. How much weight are we talking about across the trip?
Oh, say again. Sorry, I missed that.
Oh, sorry. How much weight would you say you did lose across the whole trip?
Oh, so I think I lost just under 2 stone. So I lost, which is actually not too bad over a month. But if you saw the amount of food I was eating, you'd think I'd be the size of a house. It was a case of let's get pizzas in. And it's not a case of Nick having one pizza, Nick's having 2 pizzas.
Wow.
And I was still losing weight. I'm really not exaggerating. I just ate and ate and ate. Every 2 miles, I was putting something in my mouth to fuel my run. And every single morning, I was way less than the following day. So it was just ridiculous.
And an awful lot for your body to adapt to as well. It's easy to focus on just what your legs are doing during this, but that's, I mean, on the way in, that must be an incredible shock to your digestive system. And also, you're now a month out of that. I mean, are you feeling long-term effects of that change?
I was very lean and I was very toned afterwards, because I think people forget that if you're running 95, 100,000 steps a day, your core and your kind of obliques and your back and bits do get fairly strong, because they have to support what your hips and stuff are doing. And so I was just a kind of a skeletal, very lean thing. I was about 2.8% body fat by the time I finished, and I looked like in all seriousness, I looked like a prisoner of war. I took a picture of me just in my pants afterwards, and I just looked terrible. But having done that, I've since got back to a bit of sea swimming and tried to do a little bit of mobility work. I've healed all of the bits that were damaged, as much as they can do. I've got my toenails back, and I've been able to get into the gym and try and put on a bit of. So I'm eating less. I'm eating more healthier foods, but I'm not eating that much less, because I'm trying to put a bit of weight back on in a healthier way. So more time in the gym and less time just running it off.
Oh, well, excellent. I'm glad you're getting some calorific rewards for what you did as well. You can keep eating a bit more for a little while longer. You deserve that pizza, Nick.
Thanks, mate.
Yeah, no worries. Look, we did jump ahead quite far there. I'd like to get back to sort of the beginning of this project a bit as well, because the last time we spoke, you were the man that ran the world. Now you're the man that ran Britain. That almost sounds like a downgrade when I put it that way, and that's not how I meant it to be framed. But how did the idea for this particular bonkers challenge come to you?
So, it goes back to September of last year. It was between lockdown 1 and lockdown 2, and Nikki and I decided that we could go to Italy to run in Italy. So we set off on a mission to run 100 marathons in 100 days, down from north of Italy to the south of Italy, all the way down through Sicily, with the plan to finish on Christmas Eve and then go back up to the Alps to have Christmas and then a few months in the Alps. And that is exactly what we did. We managed to, out of some pure miracle, be right in the middle of the period where all of the regions of Italy that we were going through were green. It was almost like driving along a street and all the traffic lights turning green as you needed them to. And then as we left the country, everything locked down again. Excuse me. So it was pretty perfect. So then we were in the French Alps, Christmas Day, had 3 or 4 months there with the whole of the country locked down, no skiing happening. We were just, skinning up and having a great time, kind of celebrating doing Italy, and also swearing that we'd never do that again, because it was brutal on our relationship and brutal on real life, because Nikki was supporting me running a marathon every day down through Italy, driving on the wrong side of the road for a pandemic. So it was hard, and it was obviously cold and wet and windy because it was coming into December. Or even January. And we were in Italy, and we knew that we had a few missions planned, but we were waiting for COVID to allow things to open up. We planned to do a journey north to south of Malawi. We're going to do some charity and fundraising and some well drilling out there. And then COVID basically put a big pause on that because we couldn't get to Malawi. Yeah. And so we then planned to do north to south of Italy. Sorry, not Italy. We've done that one. New Zealand. We're going to go and run north to south of New Zealand. Maybe Nikki was going to come over on a bike with me. Maybe we're going to take the dog as well, so she can run alongside us. It was going to be a lovely family adventure. But then we were speaking with the government, the British government and the New Zealand government, and working out whether it was possible. And we got to the point that it probably wasn't possible. And even if it was, maybe it's not the right thing to be doing. So we put a pin in that one as well. And then Boris announced that we, Britain, would come out of or begin to ease the lockdown restrictions on the 15th of April and be able to go out and kind of meet people again, etc. And so we thought, right, what can we do to celebrate not only me getting back and doing a trip and having kind of gagging for an opportunity to get out and run again, but also celebrate the running community coming back together after being isolated, and also capture all of those extra people out there that have taken up running through lockdown. And we thought, what a better way than do something that I would probably never do because it's too close to home and I like to be far away doing all these far-flung things. Let's run around Britain. And then I realized the mileage looked good and maybe we could do a little bit more and get the magical 200 marathons in. I've just done 100 marathons in 100 days. Can I do 200 marathons in 100 days around Britain? And within 3 weeks or 3.5 weeks, we were, from thinking about it to doing it, we'd started and I was running around Britain. So not much training, and also a lot of that was in the hills of the Alps. So my distances was not enough. We came back home for a couple of weeks. My training was okay, but in reflection, pretty poor. And the answer to the question of can I run 200 marathons in 100 days, the answer was not at that moment because I wasn't fit enough. And we quickly got into trouble and lots of injuries happened. But ultimately, the goal was still on to finish running around Britain, and that's what we did.
Well, that's incredible. You've ruined about a third of a page of research that I'd written here, where I really wanted to dig into how you go about training for something like this. Sort of what coaches are out there that could possibly tell you exactly what you should do to prepare your body for 2 marathons a day. 3.5 weeks, and you were in.
Yeah, I actually think had I had more training. I look at this from both angles. If I had more training, let's say I had another 2 months of hard training, I think my body would have continued as it did. I think I would have had the same injuries, but I think I would have had them later. Because I would have had more training, I would have been fitter and stronger, but I also wouldn't have been as heavy. And therefore, my body weight would have probably been able to be losing body weight too quickly. So I was actually quite grateful to have those couple of extra kilos at the beginning, because although it was sort to run on, I had that fat store, which was 11% as opposed to what it would have been had I trained, which would have probably been down to 6%. So that extra fat percentage may have saved the mission. That said, I had also just run 100 marathons in 100 days down to Italy, so that training was there in the background. But I suppose it doesn't answer your question of the normal runner of what to do to train. I wouldn't recommend just running 100 marathons, that's for sure.
Yeah, preparing for running 200 marathons in 100 days by running 100 marathons in 100 days, it is a tall ask. I remember a long time ago I got to talk to somebody who'd done what do they call it, the self-transcendence, the one that's just a single city block in Queens, New York, that they have to run 3,000 miles on. And he talked about he was like, well, it sort of hurts at first and you get a few niggles in your legs, but things settle down after a while. And I was like, well, how long do you think? And he went, about 3 weeks, and then things are usually settled. I mean, would you say you had that kind of adaptation time?
Yeah, that's exactly what I would say. I was expecting to get some form of injury within the first month because I hadn't trained enough and my body wasn't ready. But I hoped that whatever injury I had wouldn't be too catastrophic where I could kind of run through it. So I think, it's exactly my same ethos of any of these big missions I do. The first month is the hardest because you have the option of training into something like this. So I could go, right, well, for 20 days or for 30 days before the mission, I'm just going to run the mileage and get that first month of pain out of the way and settle in. But when you've got 100 days of running ahead of you, the last thing you want to do is have a month of running beforehand. You want to train, but you don't want to have every day solid. And so it's very difficult to do when you're doing that kind of mileage, 50 a day. It's difficult to want to do more. So we went into it very undertrained and thinking, I had plenty of interviews before and I said, I honestly don't know whether I can do it because I'm not given the respect that it deserves, but I'm going to try it and hope we get through it.
Hi everyone, sorry to interrupt. Just here to remind you that this episode was brought to you by Resilient Nutrition, and you can find their full range of elite long-range fuels exclusively on the BTU store now. The elite long-range fuels are a series of delicious nut butter products with micronutrients and supplements designed to give you exactly what you need when you need it. They're delicious, they're great for fueling your whatever your adventure is, and you can find them on the BTU store and nowhere else right now. Store.beyondtheultimate.co.uk. That's store.beyondtheultimate.co.uk. Okay, let's get back to the podcast. I really want us to get onto some of the sort of happier aspects of exploring the UK and the people that ran with you, and also we definitely want to talk about your 196 project. But before we get onto the nicer stuff, what sort of injuries are we talking about? Because I get the impression from some of your stuff on Instagram that you really did take a beating.
I did take a beating, yes. I was expecting, I mean, when we did Italy, I had a fracture of my shin, and I experienced what that was like, and that was pretty sore, but we soldiered on. That was one marathon a day. What happened in Run Britain on day 6, to give you a bit of context, running for 12 hours every day, starting at 6 in the morning, trying to finish by 6 in the evening. That was kind of the best daylight window. And we were coming into summer, so we had a little bit more sunshine every day, which was perfect. The timing was all good. But day 6, I was along the Jurassic Coast, south of England, in Dorset, and my knee had started to give me a bit of jip, and I had a little bit of bad sleep. I hadn't been eating enough, and ultimately the first week of double marathons, the first 6 days of 12 marathons, had given me a bit of a beating on the Cornish hills. We did something like 2 or 3 ascents of Everest just in the first week with the hills. It was just absurd. And on day 6, at 1:30 in the morning, I still hadn't finished. I was supposed to be finishing at 6, and I still was going the following morning. I still hadn't done my distance. And I was in a lot of pain. I was on sticks. I had sticks. I had crutches. I had physios coming out to see me in the middle of the night, just from local people that were turning up saying, we can try and get you back on the road and keep moving. And my brother, who happened to live nearby, and was also finishing a night shift, he's a nurse in A&E, he came out and just to support me. He was going to support me anyway, but he was more in a professional capacity than a brother capacity at this moment. Yeah. And I was very wobbly on my feet. I was really struggling just physically. My body was just crumbling under me, and my mind then started to go, and I was hallucinating. I remember turning to Chris, my brother, and saying, you see that lion on the beach? And I was convinced I saw this lion. It was a big lion, a lioness sitting back on her legs, and had this one beautiful big triangular ear. And I remember distinctly looking at him saying, do you see that lion? And he just looked at me with the brotherly grin and slight smirk of, yeah, you're hallucinating, bro. And that's exactly what's happening. And I was hallucinating. I finished at 1:30 in the morning, got back, had my first wash of the journey in my brother's bath, got in the bath, and I didn't remember this at the time, but Nikki took this photo of me in the bath, and I looked like I've had 40 pints. I looked absolutely wrecked. I was just a shell of my former self and a skeleton. I could hardly keep my eyes open. I was a bit sunburnt from the week before. I was just a mess. And then the next day we went to the physio, a guy called Tim, who actually did the physio for Eddie Izzard. And he looked at my knee, and I ultimately had a flip meniscus in my right knee, which is incredibly, incredibly painful. And we chose to have 2 days off, and then try and get a little bit of fuel and just rest in me to get my knee, because I couldn't even put any weight on it by the end. I was so up to my eyeballs in painkillers. And it was day 6, and I was already kind of stumbling at the first hurdle, with effectively what we were supposed to have 16 weeks ahead of us, and I was already failing. And it was a pretty miserable time. But on day 3, we thought, okay, let's just try and do a marathon today. And I got up, did the marathon, and we said, right, let's try and do another one today. And we did another one. And then for after a few weeks, I managed to get back up to distance, catch up on some of the distance, and generally be just fumbling along. I was doing long days, but getting the distance completed. And then on the Norfolk coast and also Lincolnshire coast, the disaster started to strike again when I felt some pain in my right shin, my tibia. And then ultimately I ran through that because we needed to catch up on the miles. And I went to hospital on day 33 in Kings Lynn, and they confirmed that I had two pretty hefty fractures in my right tibia.
Wow.
Which was really, the doctor actually said, the good news is we found a bone in your body that not everybody has. The bad news is it's also fractured.
What?
So I think I've probably along my tibia, I have an extra bone longitudinally, a couple of inches long, which is next to my tibia. And they say it's quite rare, but it's possible to grow an extra bit of bone if you do a lot of physical activity as a child, particularly ballerinas and stuff. I wasn't a ballerina, but I was a skier, and so I think some of that bone's maybe grown from there. So I was fractured. Told me to have 6 to 8 weeks off. There was quite a miserable. How can I put it? the doctor I saw in the hospital was not very forgiving of my stupid behaviour, and said, "Yeah, well, you're stupid. Stop running. 6 to 8 weeks off." And ultimately couldn't give it 6 to 8 weeks off because we're in a mission. My only job is to continue. And so we had 3 nights off, 4 days, and I got back up and managed to stumble through a very painkiller heavy day, and I finished a marathon. And then thereafter, I managed to get back up to the 50 odd miles and get back on track, more or less, all the way to the end, which was quite remarkable because I knew my mind could do it, but I really didn't think my body was going to heal. And with the words of Tim, the physio in my ears, of understanding how the body can heal if you give it a little bit of time to offload some of your load on your legs. So I was running with sticks and stuff for a while to give that little bit of a percentage chance. And it worked. Lots of protein, lots of massage, lots of draining the legs, lots of healing, trying to get some decent night's sleep. And ultimately we did it. I was late, but we finished in 128 days rather than 100. But I take that considering all the injuries. And that's not including all of the minor tears of Achilles and hamstring pulling and all sorts of bits and pieces in my legs going wrong. So they were the highlights, or the lowlights, I suppose.
Yeah, but let's call those the lowlights. I mean, even those little injuries in very inverted commas that you listed at the end there could have been potential showstoppers. So, yeah. I mean, incredible. I mean, what sort of? I don't want to dwell on this too much, but I'm fascinated now. How much pain are we talking about from running on 2 fractures in one of your legs?
I was. After those fractures, or even in the lead up to the fractures, I would say I was crying every day for nearly a month while I was running. Not out of I want my mummy, this is really horrible. This is so much pain that I just cry. And I didn't take any more painkillers other than the normal anti-inflammatory and paracetamol, so ibuprofen and paracetamol. And the reason I didn't do any more than that was I wanted to feel what was going on. I wanted to feel the improvement, more importantly.
Very important, yeah.
And I can remember vividly, having one day where I got to 10 miles and I hadn't cried yet. And I thought, this is good. And then the next day it was a little bit further. And then a week later, I'd completely forgotten that all of that pain existed. And I just turned that corner. So
thank God the human brain is able to move on from something like that.
I know, it's remarkable. And I honestly say the amount of people out there that are friends, family, people I coach, etc. You see it on social media as well. People that have slight injuries and they go to acupuncture, they go to hydrotherapy, they go all through these different processes, and they all work and they are all great for your injuries. However, give yourself credit, give your mind the credit that it deserves, because your mind can do so much of the healing if you just do a couple of those bits, like taking a little bit of the load off your feet, putting an extra insole in your shoe, maybe striking your foot in the right way. being better with your form, maybe having a little bit more rest, maybe having a little bit more protein. Just do those little bits. You don't have to rely on a weekly appointment of acupuncture, for example, to heal you. Do it, but also do stuff yourself. Manage it yourself within your own mind, because that's ultimately how we've managed to continue. And I'm very proud of it. And if you asked me on day 6, are we going to finish this trip, I would have said yes to you because I wanted to finish it. But the answer is I didn't think I actually could. I wanted to, I didn't think I could, but we try until we can't. And so we managed to finish.
Well, and you've proven so much to yourself and to anyone else who's listening in that moment. You did persevere. You did finish the mission. It is a record. I mean, fantastic work.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm pleased. It's not very enjoyable at the time, but second degree fun, as we say.
I think we've moved beyond type 2 here. If there's a type, say, 5 or 6, we may well have gone into that territory. Yeah. Okay, so that's the lowlights. Let's draw a line under that. There also must have been aspects of this that were just wonderful. I'm sure I read somewhere that you had over 1,500 people that came and joined you along the way for little stints here and there. And the amount of the UK you saw, there must have been some very, very positive experience as well, right?
Oh, of course, yeah. Overarching experience. We actually had I think it was about 2,800 runners we had out.
Oh, wow!
And because a lot of the people were turning up for the last couple of weeks, but we had stints where I wasn't expecting many people in out in the middle of nowhere in Scotland, and then all of a sudden you get this bunch of people turning up, and runners being runners, and those like-minded people. I said this in my last book, that it's not just a casual conversation with a chap that's from the pub or somebody you work with that you may not have things in common with. These are all people that have gone out of their way selflessly to come out and have a jolly with me and support me. And so by the very definition of their effort, they are lovely people. And so that energy rubs off on me, and I can take that little kind of bottle of energy that they've given me onto the following day. And then that's handed on to the baton, if you like, of positivity from one person to the next. So I was honestly so blown away by the support. But let's be honest with the situation as well. Having so many people come and run with me, the downside of that is that I found myself losing my voice. I also found myself being very mentally drained. If I said to you, right, go and sit in a box, sit in a room somewhere, and for 12 hours, I will shove another person in there and they will ask you the same questions every day. 12, 15 times a day, you'll answer the same things whilst doing a marathon every day on sleep deprivation. It's hard, and yet you don't want to not have it because it's even harder. It's kind of this weird flip effect of this juxtaposition between going, I can't talk anymore because I've not got any voice, but if you weren't here, the day would be miserable and not as enjoyable. So I owe a lot to the people that came out and ran with me. I'm very, very grateful.
Yeah, what an incredible mix there as well. You're absolutely right. I've talked to a couple of people who've done sort of the spine race, for instance, and I often wondered if one of the difficult things about that is the amount of time that you're so isolated, but actually you need that mental space sometimes as well.
Yeah, you do. You absolutely do. And I've actually just finished writing a piece for the new book, the Run Britain book, which is about my kind of peaceful moments in the day when I have the morning, the first couple of hours in the morning, if it's dark or very early, I often have those moments on my own. And I crave those bits of peace and quiet because it was my kind of just getting into my rhythm, turning up to a gym when nobody's there, or getting to a swimming pool when you're first in, or just getting out when everybody else is sleeping. It was so magical. And then for the sun to come up, the birds to start waking up, the traffic start to increase, the runners start to come out and run with you. I was just blown away by the contrast of having the peace. And I was sing to myself. I would write some poetry in my head, and it was just a really, arty, poetic experience in those first few hours in the morning every day. And then, of course, it gets tougher, and you get into the real grind of the day. But it was brilliant.
Fantastic. And what about the UK itself? You've seen all of it now. You've been just about everywhere, which is incredible. What were some of your favorite areas to run through?
Yeah, we went through. We're actually just adding them all up now, but we think the estimate is anywhere between 3,000 to 3,500 towns and villages running through.
Wow.
Which is huge, because there's a lot of little places that you go through. You don't really know it's a village or a town, but it's a new name and a new kind of address. So, and obviously all the counties around the coast, which is more or less all the counties in Britain as well. And everyone has their own unique signature, their own unique takeaway. I suppose I've always likened, with running the world, I referred to Africa having its 54 countries within the continent being very similar to the US having its 50 states, and every one of them being different. But we too in Britain, our little island, has its nuances within county to county, village to village, all around the country. And so, like I say, with places like crossing the Thames, where the huge mouth of the Thames, I've never known how huge it was as you run through it, but obviously you can't escape it because it goes to the ocean, and we're running near it. And then the other end of the country, you've got up these beautiful white shell beaches that look like tropical Pacific islands up in the northwest of Scotland, which nobody knows about it because Scotland's got a reputation of being cold and full of midges. So you end up experiencing these places and thinking, why on earth have I not been here? I've been around on the planet for 32 years and I've not seen these places. And I've been to Yemen, Libya, and I've just felt a little bit silly for not having seen them. And then I think about all the people that still haven't seen them. So I really do urge people to get on the case and see a lot of Britain. Obviously, the Welsh bit was towards the end of my journey, and there were some beaches there. I think if I could sum up the journey, you've got beaches, which are the beautiful beaches. You've also got the beaches, which are the cultural kind of hubs of places, whereby they're either tourist attractions like Blackpool, or whether they are community fishing villages like you get in the southwest of Cornwall. And they all give their little bit of air of even just the smells. You've got the smells of maybe diesel engines and generators in Blackpool, and then you've got the smell of like fishmongers and all that sort of stuff down in Cornwall. It's just an absolute patchwork of senses, and I've thoroughly enjoyed experiencing it. And of course, we saw different seasons. We went through the different areas of the country in different times. Howling winds and gales up in some of the northwest of Scotland, and then some of the 32 odd degrees when we were running down through Wales and Rosselli Beach, and it's just, I had the most amazing times. We saw minke whales, we saw dolphins many times, too many to count. We saw 150 different species of bird, white-tailed eagles, you name it. And I was just exposed, and I fell in love with nature and all that Britain had to offer. And in all honesty, I went into it with a little bit of a cynical opinion of, Britain's going to be pretty, but it can't be that pretty. It's just Britain. And I was completely wrong. It is stunning.
Beautiful. You paint a really vivid picture there as well, and you've alluded a couple of times now to the fact that you are writing this into a book at the moment. Is that right?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. I'm just really enjoying it, actually. We're writing it in a slightly different way to the last book. Andy, who I mentioned, the right-hand man, we've decided to write this one together because he has such a big influence on the trip, and not only does he deserve to have a voice in it, but his voice is going to give such a good perspective of what actually happened day to day, because my memories and photos and videos that we have don't necessarily give the full picture. I can write from my perspective, but he can write from his, and not just as a support person and as a friend, but as somebody that was handling road traffic incidents, having to travel around road closures, having to navigate, having to food shop, having to look after himself as well for these 4 months. So I think it's going to be a really good book. And I say that because I don't know of many other books that have the perspective so vividly from a supporter. And I think anybody that's into ultra marathons, your support crew can make or break a mission. And Andy made this mission possible.
I've talked to so many ultra runners and stuff who've done FKTs and stuff over the last 18 months, and everyone has taken time to really, really sing the praises of their support teams and stuff. And it does. It doesn't just take the person whose legs are doing the miles. I really look forward to this book. I think it'll be fascinating from both perspectives.
Yeah, it's going to be good. We're actually getting together this weekend pre-marathon just to compare notes and see what we've been writing. And it's it's going to be brilliant. There's bits that I've read that he's written already, and I hadn't remembered any of it. So it's just fantastic.
Well, fantastic. Well, look, Nick, I know I've grabbed you between meetings and you're incredibly busy, but before I let you go, I want to hear about Project 196. This is sort of what this was in aid of.
Yeah, thank you. No, I'm very proud of this. So this is the charity that we set up after running the world. It's called the 196 Foundation. It's on online, www.the196foundation.com. And this is a completely non-profit charity in aid of everything anywhere. So the concept is very simple. We are asking for donations of £1.96 per month. And when you donate that money, that all goes into a central pot. And then once a year, we deliver a project to help a cause. It could be a next door neighbour that needs an expensive wheelchair. It could be building a school in Kenya. It could be building an orphanage. It could be a disabled boxing gym. It could be the homeless in London. It could be any cause anywhere in the world. But the unique thing about this charity, and the thing I'm proud about, is not only is it a tiny amount of money, £1.96 a month, you can't donate any more, you can't donate any less. And the reason for that is we've come up with this concept of a democratic donorship, whereby all of the donors get a vote on who we help. So if you donate, you get a voice in who we help. So every April, we'll send an email around to the donors and say, right, these are the 3 options that we can afford to deliver. And they would have been given us, contacted us by other people around the world over the year. And we'll put together 3 options, and then all of the donors can vote on who we help. And the winner obviously gets our support, and it's delivered in a completely non-profit way. So no staff get paid. It's not going to be if we're building a school, we're not going to pay builders. We're going to get volunteers to do it. The money that we will get from the donors is all going to be on simple things like bricks and mortar if we're building a place, or if it's a wheelchair, it's the wheelchair. But I'll go one step further to explain that. Let's say we do deliver a £3,000 wheelchair to somebody that needs a specialised wheelchair. We're not just going to go and spend the money on the wheelchair. We will spend that year or whatever time we have from the donors voting on that project to work out how we can get that wheelchair cheaper or a better wheelchair at the same price, for example, just trying to get the value out of this money. And I'm a big believer in trying not to waste money, trying to save it and trying to spend it in the right way. And so I think a lot of charities out there, when they get big, there's a lot of waste in corporate businesses anyway, but especially in charities. And I'm desperate for us not to do that, not to fall into that trap. And from my finance background, to link up with wheelchair companies, for example, and have a conversation with them and say, this is what we're doing. Can you give us a discount? Can we have 2 wheelchairs for the price of 1? So when we can give it to somebody else that needs it, try and deliver it on an impact ratio basis. And so we'll be delivering the project. We'll then do this impact report. And then the next year we'll come around and we'll choose the next project based on who the donors vote for. So I'm super excited about it. I have our first round of voting in April. We've already got just under 1,000 donors. And of course, Running Britain was all to raise awareness and some funds for this. So if you can afford £1.96 a month, that's less than £24 a year, please get on the website. It's super easy to see what we do. And we need all the donors that we can get.
I will make absolutely certain that the links are underneath in the description of this podcast so that we can share that far and wide. I love this idea. 100% non-profit, and it sounds like you'll be putting an awful lot of your time and energy into this, into making sure it's all used wisely.
Yeah, and not only my energy, but lots of great people that I've met around the world. And for example, the chair of the foundation is a good friend of mine who I met during Running the World. I met him in Guatemala. I ran with him in most continents around the world. He also runs the Impact Marathon series, a guy called Nick Kershaw, and Nick, and he's just a brilliant advocate for this stuff, and all of the other people behind the scenes that are volunteering their time to make this foundation possible. So please, just under £2, £1.96 a month. All of it goes to the right causes. No staff get paid. I don't get any money out of it at all. The charity costs about £1,000 a year to run, and I pay that out of my own pocket, or we find a third party to subsidise it. None of it comes from the donations. So please do dig deep, and £1.96 is all we ask for.
So not even digging that deep.
It's not. It's really not that deep. No, I mean, if you can sign up for a year, and you're spending less than, I don't know, a subscription for something. So yeah.
Incredible. Yeah, I will quite happily do without one latte a month so that I can put £1.96 a month into this project with you.
Thank you so much. I'm grateful.
No worries. Well, look, Nick, I am going to release you because I know you have 100,000 things that you need to be doing today. But I just want to say thanks again for getting on the podcast and for having the exuberance and the energy to fit so much into the sort of 45 minutes we've had today.
No, thanks, Will. I'm really grateful, and thank you to you and everybody listening. Remember that people like Will and your podcast and people like you give us the platform to do these kind of things and to shout about it and to talk about it. And I owe a lot to you as well, Will, because without this, then people wouldn't hear what we're doing. So thank you very much.
Well, what a thoroughly bloody lovely note to end on.
Thank you, mate.
Thank you very much, Nick. Genuinely have a great rest of your day, and I hope to talk to you again after your next completely bonkers challenge.
Yeah, cheers, mate. Speak to you soon. Take care.